Welcome to the margin portion of the course. In this portion of the course, we're going to talk about margin, which allows customers to borrow money from the broker-dealer. They can then use this money that they borrow to buy stocks. Also in margin accounts, customers can borrow securities, stocks and bonds, from the broker-dealer to short sell them to other investors. Always feel free to send any questions that you have over to info@greico.com. And now on with the show.
Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from Greico Financial Trading, and welcome to the margin portion of the course. So basically, again, we're talking about margin, the idea of being able to borrow from the broker-dealer, whether it's cash to buy securities or whether it's securities to short sell them. Margin allows you to borrow from the broker-dealer. But let's focus on the whole idea of borrowing money, the whole idea of leverage. Because it's very similar to what people do with houses, what they do with mortgages. So let's examine that similarity. So, when you take a look at people on Main Street, what they do is they're going to buy houses. Okay? And they're not going to do it in cash. So if you wanted to buy a house that's worth $100,000, you're not going to just plop out $100,000 of cash and buy that house. If you can, that's cool. But more than likely what's going to happen is you're going to borrow money to buy the house. The money that you borrow is called a mortgage. And in order to get that mortgage, a bank is going to want you to put some money up front. Okay, and then the house that you're going to buy is the collateral. So if you don't pay off that mortgage, they're going to take the house. But that down payment, basically we're going to use 20%. The reason is, as long as you deposit 20% down payment on a house, you avoid something called private mortgage insurance, PMI. So if you deposit $20,000, 20% of the value of the house as a down payment, the bank will lend you the other $80,000. That's your mortgage. So to own a $100,000 house, you've only laid out 20 grand. Now, if that house were to go up in value to $200,000, well, what's happened? You now own an asset that's worth $200,000. Now, if you had paid for it in cash, $100,000, your asset would have only doubled in value from $100,000 to $200,000. But since you only put down $20,000 initially, your asset is now worth 10 times the amount of money that you put up. So you've maximized your return by investing using other people's money. Okay? That's the same idea as to what happens on Wall Street, except here we're going to buy securities. Now, still, like the house has a market value, securities, stocks and bonds have a market value. But we don't call it a mortgage now, we call it a debit balance. So the money you borrow from the broker-dealer is referred to as a debit balance. And instead of a down payment, we refer to it as your Reg T deposit. Okay? So once again, let's say you buy, which is typically 50% set by the Federal Reserve. That's what Reg T is. But let's say you buy $100,000 worth of securities. Now, since Reg T is 50%, saying that you have to deposit 50%, you deposit $50,000. So then the broker-dealer will lend you the other $50,000. Okay, so let's take a look at that again. So if the securities go up to $200,000, if you had paid for it in full, $100,000, you would have only doubled your money. But since you did it on margin and you only put up 50 grand, that 200 grand worth of securities you have now are worth 4 times the amount of money that you put down initially. You've maximized your return by using other people's money. So margin is just like a mortgage. But where does that money come from? Does the broker-dealer just have this big wad of cash that it just lends people from? No. The broker-dealer borrows the money from banks and then lends it to you. But how does that whole process work? Well, let me introduce you to our long margin map. So this little diagram is kind of how we're going to handle long margin. So the first part is the event. That's kind of like what happens each day in the account. That's the market value. The market value is just the value of all the securities in your account in aggregate. The debit balance, the money you borrowed from the broker-dealer. The margin requirement, 50%, so that's the Reg T margin requirement. There's your equity, That's what you walk away with. So if you were to sell the securities and walk away, you walk away with your equity. There's your SMA, your special memoranda account. No one ever calls it special memoranda account. The easiest way to think of SMA, which is usually referred to as SMA, or excess equity, it's a credit line. It's kind of like how on a house, as your equity goes up on your house, you can get an equity line of credit. You can borrow against the growing value of your house. Well, SMA is a credit line that you get as your securities go up in value. So you can borrow against the growing value of your securities. Now, let's say you had $10,000 of SMA. You could go buy $10,000 worth of food at the local grocery store. But if you were to use the SMA, your credit line, to buy more securities at the broker-dealer, it's going to magically double. And that's referred to as your buying power. Okay? So we're going to say that you, the customer, want to buy 1,000 IBM at 50. So 1,000 IBM at 50 should cost $50,000. Cool. Now again, you got to deposit the Reg T 50%. So you're going to deposit $25,000. And the broker-dealer will lend you the other 25. Well, where does that money come from? Okay. Now what happens is that when you sign the margin agreement, when you opened up your margin account, you pledged all your securities as collateral to the broker-dealer. And the broker-dealer then pledges your securities to a bank to get your loan. But not all your securities. Only 140% of your debit balance. So in this case, you're borrowing 25 grand. In order to get your money, the broker-dealer is going to say, 140% of that 25 grand is how much of my customer's securities you can take if they don't pay you. So 140% of 25,000 would be 35,000. Okay? So basically 35 out of your $50,000 worth of securities would be pledged to the bank, who's then going to lend the money to the broker-dealer at an interest rate called the broker call loan rate. And then the broker-dealer will lend to you at a rate above that. Okay? But this whole 140% rule, so again, while Reg T says that you got to put down 50%, the whole 140% rule is part of what's called Regulation U. Now, the reason why the 140% is important as well is because the broker-dealer is only allowed, when you sign that margin agreement, you also sign that loan consent form saying they can lend your securities. Well, the broker-dealer can only lend the part that's hypothecated. So the $35,000 that they hypothecated to the bank, they pledged to the bank, that's the part they're allowed to lend. So out of your $50,000 worth of stock, they can lend out $35,000 worth of it. And that's a calculation the broker-dealer has to do every day, because your debit balance can change every day as money comes in and money leaves the account. Now the rules that regulate all this are like Reg T. Regulation T focuses on the lending from the broker-dealer to the customer. Reg U is the rules regarding the bank lending to the broker-dealer. And then Reg G would be the same thing, except if it's a non-bank, like an insurance company or a credit union, something other than a bank lending to a broker-dealer, but same idea. Now, Reg T is a very expansive rule, okay? So again, there's the whole idea that the broker-dealer can lend you half, which means you have to put down half. But there's also a part of Reg T that talks about when does that money need to come in. So that $50,000 that you're buying, you need to bring half, $25,000. Do I need to bring it in right away? No. Under Reg T says that you can bring that money within 5 days of the trade, 5 business days of the trade. Okay, so even though trades typically settle T plus 3 business days pre-September 2017, so if you're watching this September 2017 going forward, trades will be settling T plus 2. If it's before September 2017, trades still settle T plus 3 business days. So if I buy a security on Monday on a T plus 3 settlement, it would settle on Thursday, because Monday would be trade date, Tuesday's business day number 1, Wednesday's business day number 2, Thursday's business day number 3, the settlement date. But so typically that's when the trade's over, but according to Reg T, I get 2 more days to bring the money if I want. That doesn't mean the broker-dealer is going to wait that long, but as the rules are. And if I don't bring the money by that payment date, then I have to, ask for an extension. So I'll make an extension with what's called my designated examining authority, which really means FINRA. And the reason why DEA is generally a better answer than just saying FINRA outright is because what happens is that every broker-dealer has a certain part of FINRA, there's a certain FINRA district that supervises them. So DEA is really referring to that particular FINRA district that supervises your broker-dealer. So if FINRA headquarters doesn't supervise your broker-dealer, the local FINRA district, their designated examining authority, does. Okay? Now clearing firms have to file monthly reports listing all the different extension requests they've had. Okay, and they got to get that within 5 days of month end. Now, these reports include all, and again, if you're the clearing firm, you have firms that clear through you. So those are called introducing brokers. So if the firm you work for has a clearing firm, then your firm is an introducing broker. Now, if any introducing broker has more than 2% of their trades for that month requiring extensions, which is a bad sign, they get put on this list by the clearing firm. And what's going to happen is that for the next 90 days, so if any broker-dealer, their total extensions begin to exceed 3%, so if 2% gets you on the list, 3% gets you in trouble, then what's going to happen is that they're not going to be allowed to borrow money for 90 days, which is going to affect all their customers. Okay? So all trades must be paid in full during those 90 days. So the firm really wants to make sure they get that money in there within 5 days and avoid getting extensions. But if they can get the extension, and if they get too many extensions, they may have their accounts frozen for 90 days, meaning they can't extend credit, which means the clearing firm will not lend money to those clearing broker-dealers. Because again, this whole T+5 Reg T payment date is not necessarily a requirement on the individual customer. 90% of the time, the customer doesn't realize 90% of this stuff is going on. It's really the introducing broker and the way they're dealing with their clearing firm. So it happens behind the scenes from your actual retail customer. Just little technicalities on what's going on here in margin. Okay? So with that, I'll see you guys in the next part of the class.